Former presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg addressed Vermont's Democratic Party virtually at their annual fundraiser. But first, he talked to our Kat Villianzoni.
Joining us now is former South Bend, Indiana mayor and presidential candidate Mayor Pete Buttigieg. Thank you for taking the time for us.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.
I guess a core question that we've heard from people is there enough integrity in U.S. politics from both parties?
Well, that's up to us. Look, our democracy is imperfect, but the tools we have for making it more perfect, those tools only count if we use them. And I'm talking about the ballot box. Reforms are going to be needed across my lifetime in order for our democracy to do better, to get money out of politics, to deal with gerrymandering, to make sure that every U.S. citizen has representation in the House and Senate, just to name a few. But what we know is the first step toward changing any of that is to actually make our voices heard in the elections that are coming up. Because for any one of us, your moment of maximum power is the moment you fill out that ballot.
So how do politicians go about uniting people, especially given the current polarization between the two parties?
Be unified around the values that we have. And certainly I've been inspired to see how that's happening within our own Democratic Party, where you have a really wide range of voices. We looked at our DNC and we had everybody from Senator Sanders of Vermont to Republicans like John Kasich, all saying, okay, we don't agree on everything, but we agree on this. We need to change what's going on in the White House. I also think there's a chance to draw more and more Americans into that future, because if there's one thing I learned campaigning for president, especially campaigning in very conservative areas, it's that the aspirations that we have for our lives are so consistent. The desire to make sure everyone can thrive economically, an insistence that we do something so that everybody can get health care, a belief in just the importance of fundamental decency and fairness in this country. These are things that we have a chance to act on and to unify around. And we've got to be more unified as a country because of what we face in our future, not just the moment upon us with the pandemic, but a climate crisis that will leave us behind if we don't do something about it in these years we're living in right now.
So do you think Americans view both major political parties as officials who are more concerned about getting reelected than actually solving those problems that you just mentioned?
Well, I think there's a lot of frustration with the behavior of politicians, and it's one of the reasons why I thought it was important to enter the process. We can either grumble about it or we can do something about it. It was that process of always finding myself asking, why don't they do this better? Why don't they fix this road? Why don't they change how our city's doing? That led me to have an aha moment where I said, wait a minute, the question is the wrong question. The question is, why don't I? Why don't I do something to fix this? And in my own case, that led to a decision to run for office and a very rewarding experience in public service. All of us have to ask that question, why don't I? And the rest of that sentence may be about running, it may be about advocacy and activism, it may be about voting itself. What we know for sure is that if we don't do something at the ballot box to send a message about what we expect from our political leaders, then we shouldn't be surprised to get more of the same.
So you're considered one of the younger influential politicians. How do you work to change some of those problems in the way politics is being conducted today?
Well, first of all, we need to level with the people that we're speaking with about the issues in front of us, and in particular offer a message to a younger generation that basically boils down to this. The longer you're planning to be here, the more you have at stake in a set of often irreversible decisions that are about to be made about our climate, about our economy, about the trajectory of our country and the way we relate to the rest of the world. We're not going to get a do-over on some of these issues. And politicians and political institutions are imperfect, but they're definitely not going to get any more perfect if you sit on the sidelines.
Do you believe that the spread of misinformation on social media is a major threat to democracy in the U.S.? And if so, what can be done about it?
It is a threat, but let's remember misinformation in different forms has existed for as long as information has existed. What's changed is how quickly it can move around. And so we as citizens need to become more sophisticated consumers of information. We need to check sources. We need to look at what's credible and what we're just clicking on because it's attention grabbing or because it confirms some bias or loyalty that we've already got. We need to be much tougher customers, harder targets for misinformation in the same way that we've learned to be pretty savvy about when an advertiser is trying to get to us. We need to do the same thing when it's an adversary, often a foreign one, whose overall goal is not necessarily to benefit one party, but to get us to trust each other less.
How can aspiring elected officials be encouraged to try new solutions to U.S. problems?
Well, it's one of the reasons I'm such a big believer in local leadership. I'm very active in national politics, but my organization, Win the Era, and there's more information about that at wintheera.com, is getting involved not just in federal, but in local campaigns. Again, that's how I came into elected office. And, I find that some of the issues of alternative facts being created, that's a little less of a problem in local government where you can see what's going on all around you. So I would urge people who are thinking about a future in public life to look around them. Sometimes not the most glamorous, but the most rewarding opportunities for public service are right in your backyard. And whatever level of government and policy you care about most, whether it's international affairs or whether it's something going on a local parks board, form a perspective, find who's leading in the right direction. If you find such a person, follow them. And if you don't find such a person, that might mean it's your turn to step up.
What's next for you then in your political career?
Well, what I know is that the immediate task in front of me and everybody who shares our values is to make sure that we defeat Donald Trump and elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to the White House. After that, I hope to continue in some way in service, but we've got our work cut out for us, and I don't want us to get ahead of ourselves.
All righty. Thank you so much for your time today.
Same here. Thank you.